James Atkinson here, and welcome to what is going to be the final episode of Season 1 of the Drinks Adventures podcast. That's the bad news. Let's get out of the way right at the top of the show. But the good news is I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be back in the new year with Season 2. I'm already well advanced with pulling together some fantastic content to share with you then, but we can talk about that more at the end of the show. For now, I want to focus on going out with a bang, or perhaps more accurately, a pop, because this week we're delving into all things champagne in Australia, where it's fair to say we absolutely love our champagne. Despite our small population, we're the world's 6th largest champagne market, with the biggest consumption per head of population outside Europe, and our imports of champagne have grown tenfold since 2001. Now this episode's going to jump around a little bit, so pay attention now so that you know what's coming up. First up, I'm taking a look at the Vin de Champagne Awards, a uniquely Australian award organised on behalf of the Comité Champagne, which represents champagne houses, growers and cooperatives of the Champagne region in France. This year was the 43rd edition of these awards, and in a short documentary, I speak to several personalities involved with the awards, which seek to discover Australians who are truly passionate about champagne, so much so that they're prepared to put their knowledge about champagne to the test. Next up is a short standalone interview with renowned wine writer and champagne expert Huon Hooke, who's been somewhat outspoken about what is, in his words, Australians' boring taste in champagne. Huon talks about how you can spend just a little bit more to get your hands on some champagne that is a little bit more complex and interesting than the non-vintage cuvées from the big name champagne houses that really make up most of the consumption in Australia. Huon and I also discussed the rise of Australian sparkling wine, which continues to win global recognition for its quality. And last up in this episode is an interview with Hervé Dantan, who is chef de cave at Champagne Lanson, one of the largest champagne houses. I talk with Hervé about what makes champagne unique, what makes Lanson unique, and the upcoming launch in Australia of Clos Lanson, a single vineyard champagne.
I always say that someone gives me a glass of champagne at the end of the day, I feel different. Immediately I feel different. It changes your mood.
That's wine writer Huon Hooke, who is chair of the Vin de Champagne Awards, a biennial competition that recognises Australians who are truly passionate about champagne. What do you think it is about champagne that has earned it that status to have an awards like that in Australia?
What makes champagne itself special? It's the same thing. It's a drink of celebration. It's a wine that gets people's emotions stirred up. It puts a smile on your face and just makes you relax more. That's just one aspect of champagne, but I think all the winners of the Vin de Champagne Award have acknowledged over the 40 odd years that it's been going that it's not just a fizzy drink for parties. It's a great wine in its own right, or it can be. At one level you do have the cheap party style champagnes, which are quite simple and quite young. But at the top end, you've got very, very complex wines which have real structure and real longevity, depth of flavour, complexity and wonderfful character, and they're amongst the greatest wines of the world.
Huon is one of 3 judges of the Vin de Champagne Awards, alongside champagne enthusiast and educator Bernadette O'Shea.
We're number 6th importer in the world of bringing champagne into a country that's got great for its wine and sparkling wines, and yet we're the 6th biggest importer of champagne in the world. So isn't that amazing? I always say it's because we've got very good palates and we recognise a quality product when we find it, and when you find champagne you can never go back. There's only one champagne and it comes from Champagne in France. Nowhere else. And it's such a unique part grown in chalk. It's whole an inland sea 70 million years ago, so you've got this special region that's unique, that's quite extraordinary, and produces these amazing wines that we can't replicate anywhere else in the world.
It's my great pleasure to announce that the winner of the professional section of the Vin de Champagne Award is Leanne Altman.
The Vin de Champagne Awards has 2 categories, one for professionals who work in the wine or hospitality industries, and one for amateurs, those who don't work in the industry but have a passion for champagne.
My name's Leanne Altman and I'm the wine buyer for Andrew McConnell Restaurants in Melbourne. Champagne was actually one of my seminal moments of discovering that I loved wine, and when I was 21, 22, I was lucky enough to travel to France and to visit a number of producers, and it was really an eye-opening moment for me, that the passion, the excitement and the deliciousness of champagne.
Candidates for the Vin de Champagne Awards submit written entries to 6 questions in the written component. The 10 best national finalists are then flown to Sydney in September to undertake a blind tasting of 3 mystery champagnes, which they then discuss with the judges, all of whom are previous winners themselves.
What they need to do is firstly have a passion for champagne. That's the most important thing. We're not looking for someone, it's not a guessing game, it's not, guess which one this is. It's not like that. It's how they came to that conclusion.
If you're in the amateur section, you probably don't have to know as much as if you're in the professional section, because the standard should be higher, and it always is higher. The amateur section, people put an enormous amount of work in anyway, especially on the things like practice tastings, for example. They really rehearse and try to understand how the house styles vary and how they can be recognised, what the hallmarks of each company are, whether they're a big Chardonnay house or a big Pinot Noir house, whether they use barrels or not, which part of the Champagne region they tend to source or lean on for sourcing their grapes from, and all of those things influence the style of the wine. If you've got some knowledge of house style, you can talk quite convincingly and persuasively and authoritatively about, this style reminds me of Bollinger because it's Pinot driven, it's full bodied, it's very dry, it's got a hint of oak in it, it's this and this and this.
There's plenty riding on the award apart from just bragging rights. The 2 winners, amateur and professional, receive a 2-week educational trip to Champagne as their prize.
Just getting here is a great achievement, and if you didn't get it this year, we always say try again next year, and it took me several times, and I think it took a couple of the other people in the room more than one go to get it.
You didn't win it on your first crack?
No, I didn't. I think I must have had 3 cracks at it. The first 1 or 2 would have been as an amateur, because I wasn't actually working in wine then. But then I went to Roseworthy, studied wine, and all of a sudden I had to ask, am I actually now a professional or an amateur? And they had to make a ruling on that. And the last couple of times I entered, I was as a professional, and by then I was working in a retailing business in Sydney, so I was obviously a professional. But yes, you don't necessarily have to enter repeat times to win it. There are plenty of first-time winners.
This year's professional winner, Leanne Altman, was a first-time entrant.
I've been doing a lot of study generally, and it was a great way to focus my champagne study. It just came at the right time and gave me the opportunity to focus a little bit on the geology and the history and the market presence of wine. My study regime probably looks a little bit maniacal, so lots of reading, lots of paraphrasing, drawing of maps, drawing of flashcards, lots of study.
This year's amateur winner was Nicole Smith, a champagne obsessive from Queensland's Sunshine Coast.
To everybody, I know how tough this is. I've been doing it for a while, and I'm just so proud that I've made it.
My day-to-day work is working as a practice manager in a medical clinic. It's actually the 4th time that I've entered, the 3rd time I've made the finals. So, it is a difficult job just to be one of those last 5 finalists that are chosen. Like any final, when you're up against 5 people who are obviously passionate, you want to learn something that maybe they don't know to get you across the line and make you, appear different to everybody else. So it becomes more challenging, I think, the more that you keep coming back. It doesn't get simpler, it probably gets more difficult.
You've obviously got a real love affair with champagne.
I think once, yes, you start to understand it, it's such a fascinating beverage, from, how it starts in the vineyards to how it actually gets to your table.
A lot of us who've been fortunate to go through the experience of being the laureate to Champagne, it's a life-changing experience. And I'm looking at Bernadette O'Shea over there and Jim Smith over there, and we all sat it in the same year, and that was 1984.
What advice would you give someone who wanted to do what you've done?
I think if you're passionate about champagne, or it's the thing to do. I mean, if you think about what the award's about, it's just saying that you want to embrace that passion and share it with other people. You want to educate people about champagne and make them understand it. Somewhere from where I started, where I knew very little, and once someone helped me to understand more about it, that's where, you know, as I mentioned, my journey started.
And is there any possibility now that you're going to, you know, throw in the old career and turn this into a professional thing somehow?
Look, never say never is what I would say to that. I mean, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but, you know, who knows what's around the corner. You know, if I can do something to promote champagne and stay in the industry, it's like anything, if you can, you know, make your passion your day job, how great would that be?
And that was Nicole Smith, winner of the amateur category of the Vin de Champagne Award in 2018. Well, Huon, thanks very much for joining me for a chat. You've been pretty outspoken about champagne consumption in Australia and the fact that Australians are drinking pretty average quality champagne. Do you think any of that message is starting to get through to consumers?
Well, look, you might know more recent statistics than I do, but the last time I looked, there was a disappointing, massive proportion of non-vintage, cheap non-vintage champagne being drunk. And that's fine, you know, people are enjoying it, they're getting great value for money, there's no doubt about that. In fact, a lot of the big houses that supply these discount champagnes in the big supermarkets are complaining that they're not really getting the return that they need for their wine. So, you know, occasionally I will hear people say we're going to try and, you know, put our price up a little bit this year. It doesn't seem to happen, but there's no doubt that the great sales of champagne in Australia are driven by the discounted supermarket brands. That's all wonderful, that's fine. But I'm fond of telling people, look, if you spend a few more dollars, not every time you buy a bottle of champagne, but every few times you buy it, spend a few more dollars and get the vintage version of the same product. Just for an example, you can get a much better champagne that way. And I think there's certainly a perception out there that anything with champagne on the label is great. The Champenoise have been very skilled at marketing their product, and they've created a lot of excitement around the word champagne, and they've done that with a great deal of skill and by being very guarded and protective, and, you know, protecting the name of champagne so that it's not abused.
What advice would you have to people other than just to look for the vintage version of the same champagne when trying to get something that's good value for money and affordable? Is it about knowing your vintages?
It is partly about knowing your vintages, and at the moment we're starting to see the tail end, I suppose, of the 2008 vintage, which I think is an exceptional vintage. If you like that very fine, tight, crisp, refreshing style of champagne that ages well, you know, high acidities, low pH, beautiful finesse in these wines. There are still some of them out there now. I would choose that over 06s, for example, which are, you know, a warmer year, not as fine as the 05s and the 08s and the 02s, which are also beautiful. But when the 12s come out, that will be exciting, because that's a great vintage, and there are probably a few 12s out there already. But the other day I was down at Vintage Cellars and I picked up half a dozen of the Cartier 08 vintage. And Cartier have been selling their non-vintage in large licks through Vintage Cellars for many years now. But if you dig around there, you'll find the vintage and you'll find other wines under that brand. And it's worth looking for this 08. I think I paid $46 something or other per bottle for it. And that's an absurdly low price for a wine of that age, from that great vintage. I mean, it's 10 years old now, and that quality. So when you dig around, you can find great bargains. The last one that I made a lot of song and dance about was the 05 Lanson Gold Label. Now, Lanson is perennially a good value wine anyway, the black label or the vintage, but the 05 was a ripper, the 02 was a ripper as well. And you know, when the great vintages of those wines come out, they're even better value than they normally are.
I suppose in parallel with the last however long that the Vin de Champagne Awards has been going on, we've probably seen the quality of Australian sparkling rising as well. Is there a compelling case for people, when they've got a limited amount of money to spend, to be looking at Australian sparkling as a genuine alternative?
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I'm not going to tell you that you should always buy champagne. Now, the Champenoise would love me to say that, but I'm not beholden to them any more than I'm beholden to the Australian wine producers. So I'm just as excited about the quality of Australian sparkling wine. And there's been it's 34 years since I won the Vin de Champagne Award, and there's been an awful lot of changes happen in both areas in that time. Tasmania has become our focal point in Australia for premium sparkling wine, and you can find some amazing value down there. It's not all high-end stuff. It's not all Arras, EJ Carr, late disgorged at $130 a bottle or whatever it is. The Piri non-vintage is a perennial favourite. This is a $25, $30 wine, I think. It's discountable, but that wine wins gold medals occasionally, and it's a beautiful wine. And that's 100% Tassie. There's a few others down there also that are outstanding value for money. That's a Brown Brothers product, and that cheapie they produce at Miller, which is just the regular Brown Brothers Pinot Noir Chardonnay non-vintage, which is it's under $25, probably under 20 in some places. It's always a good wine, always a really good wine with character. You suit your purchase to your taste, but also to your occasion. If you've got overseas visitors, then don't open champagne for them. Open them, a really good Australian example of whatever it is you're drinking.
My name is Hervé Dantan, and I am a Lançon winemaker, chef de cave, as we say in Champagne.
What do you think makes champagne so unique?
I can't say the method, because the method is well known everywhere in the world now. You can have a method Champenoise in Australia, in California, in UK now. So the method is not unique. The know-how can be unique, because we have in different houses of champagne know-how that is very important, of aging reserve wine, of blending different plots from different villages, using very long aging onlys. That's a culture we have in houses of champagne. And there is something that you can export that you can't have anywhere outside of Champagne. It is the soil and the climate. And in Champagne we have something that is rare on this planet, is that we have a perfect combination between a very chalky soil and a continental climate that will guarantee good temperatures to keep a very good freshness in the grapes. That's what is the particularity of grapes in Champagne. It is that we have Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Meunier that are ripe, but with the highest level of acidity than everywhere in the world. That is something that gives a lot of delicacy and elegance for the Champagne.
When you talk about the Champagne Lançon house style, what do you see as being the defining characteristics there?
The characteristics are very special, since we can say that Lançon has a unique style that is due to a method of winemaking that is the same that we have, and that is the same that we had when the house was created in 1760. And this method is to continue to avoid mainly malolactic fermentation on wines, what will guarantee a lot of freshness, a lot of crispy taste in our wines. That's what we used to do many and many years ago, and that's what we continue to have in all the range of Lançon. This fresh style, in fact we kept the natural freshness of grapes during the vinification, and it gives a very natural level of freshness that is always very interesting to express a lot of purity and a lot of delicacy and elegance in our champagnes.
What are the challenges of that approach? Because it requires longer maturation, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. For a non-vintage cuvée, we'll wait at least 4 years in our cellar before selling it. And for a vintage, for example, we sell today vintage 05. We wait more than 12 years on lease before selling such a vintage. And we launch today Noble Cuvée vintage 2002. This is to say that we wait constructed more than 15 years only. We know that we need to have such an aging because we are looking for a balance between the flavors and the freshness. The natural freshness of our champagne need to be balanced by a long maturity in our cellars.
And what about the other defining characteristics? You said you're a Pinot Noir dominant house?
Exactly. It is a story of Lançon. We have been very well implanted in Montagne de Reims. That is the place where the Pinot Noir is king in Champagne. We have two press houses in Montagne de Reims, one in the village of Verzenay, that is a Grand Cru area, one in Trépaille, that is a Premier Cru area. And we have been always involved with Pinot Noir vine growing. So in a black label, for example, we have at least 50% of Pinot Noir. And in gold label, we have at the minimum 52% of Pinot Noir that will give to our champagne a lot of fruitiness and very delicate vinosity.
The Clos Lançon, can you tell us about that particular wine? There seems to be a lot more emphasis on terroir and the role of growers in Champagne. Certainly over the last few years, we're hearing more and more about the diversity of champagnes that are coming out that really showcase individual vineyards. Do you think that this will be something that the houses, the larger players, will be looking to explore a bit more in the future?
So Clos Lançon is a very special plot. It's a plot that is located in Reims, in the winery, close by walls. This plot is a plot of 1 hectare. We produce only around between 6,000 and 7,000 bottles every year. So we began in 2006. 2007 will be on the market next year in Australia. And since 2007, every vintage have been elaborated with Clos Lançon. We have always explorated the different villages, the different terroirs in Champagne, because, for example, when we elaborate a black label or a gold label, we take many different plots that are coming from different villages. So we know the diversity of Champagne with the different qualities that we can have in a Chardonnay from Côte des Blancs, in a Pinot Noir from Montagne de Reims, or a Meunier from Vallée de la Marne. So it is a story of Champagne to blend different plots coming from different villages, coming from different grapes. So it's very interesting that growers now communicate a lot on different terroirs, because Champagne is like Burgundy. You don't have only Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Meunier. You have many different Chardonnay that are coming from many different places, and each village has its own specificity.
Thank you so much to Asad Rizvi, aka Silver Lining, for the use of some of his awesome music in the Champagne documentary. I'll put links in the show notes to where you can hear more from Asad. Now, as mentioned at the top of the show, this will be the last episode of Season 1. When I embarked on this podcast, I anticipated that it might be a bit longer, but it is a big undertaking. Episodes like this one are effectively about 10 normal episodes in one, given the amount of time invested in interviewing so many different people and the editing and mixing that's involved in producing a podcast of this style. On that note, I'd like to thank Dave Robertson and Matt Brown, who've each assisted with mixing some of the episodes in this season. Couldn't have done it without you guys. And if you've enjoyed the Drinks Adventures podcast, there's a few things you can do to help me continue to make it. I'm getting a bit sick of hearing myself saying this, but jump onto iTunes or Stitcher and drop the podcast an honest rating and review. It's really, really important. And tell your friends about it. Give the podcast a share on social media. All these things really help with building an audience. There are so many podcasts out there that it is very difficult to cut through all the noise. That's where you come in. If you have subscribed and are listening through a podcast app, look out for some more bonus content appearing in the feed at some stage soon. Otherwise, you can find all other shows, show notes, transcripts, and many helpful links on the podcast website, drinksadventures.com.au. And you can email me at hello@drinksadventures.com.au. It's been really awesome bringing you this show over the past couple of months. Thanks so much for your support and all the feedback that I've received through various channels, and I look forward to you joining me again soon. Here's Cameo Culture's Sandbox to take us out.